taking a look now at some Dallas Cowboys trade candidates. Of note, I don't have Dak Prescott on here. He has a no-trade clause. You could work around that with him / through him. But I also don't think the Joneses, specifically Jerry, want to start the rebuild and move on at this stage. So with that in mind, name a player who you want to see traded by the Dallas Cowboys. Go ahead and sound off for me in the comments section right now. Let's begin with Michael Gallup. And I don't know if this is a very likely outcome. Gallup, a pre-June 1st trade would only save $800K, but off the books in 2025, unlike with a post-June 1st cut. $9.5 million saved to do it after June 1st, but then you don't get the benefits of the draft pick this year, so seems somewhat unlikely. The new team would owe $9.5 million for 2024 for, unfortunately, a player who has just not lived up to the expectations needed from him since he got paid. The results have been, I would argue, profoundly disappointing. I thought the injury was really unfortunate. It stunk. It limited him. He was slow to come back. He has not returned to form. He hasn't been the same guy from 2019. For whatever reason, he's just not been the same guy. At $9.5 million, I have my doubts a team would trade for him, even if it's just a late day 3 pick. But I'll leave the door ever so slightly open because of this. The free agent market at wide receiver sucks. Pittman, Higgins, and Evans are all tagged or extended. So your top guys are Marquise Brown, Calvin Ridley. Those guys could start to approach $18 to $20 million per year. Then it's Darnell Mooney, who never broke out the way he was supposed to. Gabe Davis is wildly inconsistent. Odell Beckham Jr., who got 15 somehow last year and then wasn't playing that much in the postseason. Tyler Boyd is an aging slot. Curtis Samuel has never been able to live up to his immense potential in part because of injuries. Kendrick Bourne, DJ Chark, Josh Reynolds. It's a bad group. So you can see how a team might go, actually, you know what? Maybe we would like Michael Gallup. Now, would the Cowboys eat any money? No, probably not. That's an issue. But you can at least just kind of talk yourself into it, except for the fact that these teams can just draft somebody too. It's a really good wide receiver draft class, and that would be the way I think most of these teams approach it, including why I'm at the point that I would strongly consider paying my number 1 receiver and never paying a number 2 guy and just draft somebody on day 2 every year, every other year. So will Michael Gallup be on the Cowboys in 2024? Y for yes or N for no? It's the pinned comment on today's video. The ad comes here on YouTube. Take advantage of it. Head down there and let me know. All right, Brandin Cooks, and I have said this before. I will say it again. Leave Brandin alone. Other outlets, Bleacher Report, keep suggesting the Cowboys could trade or cut Cooks because, they need money. They save $4 million. That doesn't do anything for me. $4 million does not move the needle unless I'm getting a premium draft pick back, which you're not going to get because the team could spend that 3rd round pick on a receiver. Now, he's pretty affordable, by the way. It's like a $10 million cap hit. That's pretty cheap, all things considered. The numbers did go down this year, as have the targets. If you go to that late part of the year when they made the changes on offense after the come to Jesus meeting that was required from some of your players with the coaching staff, Cooks got going a little bit. Right now, he is a solid option, and he is cheap. Now, I'm not saying don't draft someone to make him receiver 3, but trading him and cutting Gallup and then having a massive hole at receiver 2 with not much more draft capital and not much more cap space doesn't make sense unless you're trying to blow it all up and rebuild, which this team doesn't want to do right now. I don't get it. I will continue to harp on that moving forward. If you can only pick one of these guys, who is it? BC for Brandin Cooks, MG for Michael Gallup. Now, we'll take the pay cut off the table again. Maybe the Cowboys convince Gallup of that, but pick one, BC or MG. This next one might be more of a preseason trade. I think what we will eventually do, like make or break player types of content once the year gets going. It's Sam Williams, folks. He is facing a massive offseason and preseason under Mike Zimmer. The cap savings, fairly negligible, a couple million, not even $1 million there. New team has him pretty cheap as well. But Williams has to get going. He has to become the guy that this organization and that Dan Quinn thought he could be. The numbers from 2022 to 2023, they're okay. A little bit more on the sack side, but the TFLs, the pressures kind of dipped a little bit. The tackles went up. That's good. The penalties jumped as well. Sam Williams falls into the Cowboys second-round pick trend, which is troubled or injured. It's the Blue Star Special, as we call it. And Sam Williams was a troubled player coming out of Ole Miss. Cowboys said, we can fix him. Because sometimes in round two, the Cowboys are the girl who wants to date the bad boy because she can fix him. And we know how that goes more often than not. In the end, I see two paths with Mike Zimmer and Sam Williams. Path number one is the ideal outcome. Mike Zimmer gets the most out of Sam Williams. He challenges him in all the right ways, and Williams goes, I got this, and he becomes a double-digit sack guy in year 3. Or, as I think happened this year with Dan Quinn, Williams ends up in the doghouse. Now, Mike Zimmer's a no-BS guy. If you're out there getting into car accidents and telling people that, it was not your fault, and it turns out you were speeding recklessly, Zim's going to be pissed. If you're out there making penalties and jumping off sides, Zim's going to be pissed. So I want to see what Zimmer can do with Williams. But Dan Quinn comes calling and says, hey, let me get my guy. Maybe you consider it. Now, if and when the Cowboys make a trade, we will have you guys covered. They are light on draft picks this year, by the way. So sound off for me, and make sure you have already by subscribing right now. Some more trade candidates, Trey Lance. And I'm putting him on here because I know how big media works. You will see Trey Lance LinkedIn trade rumors. Happens every offseason, despite the Cowboys' hopes here for him to be quarterback number 2. Now, I know there was the report that Trey Lance, the Cowboys are going to pick up his roster bonus. I am 99%, maybe 95% sure that was already guaranteed, and it was more of a formality picking it up versus not. So I don't think that actually matters much, and you knew that going in that his bonus was guaranteed this year. It was just a contractual structure thing. Maybe it wasn't, and the cap sites were all wrong, but that doesn't happen very often. $5.3 million. If he can become quarterback 2, it's not that bad. We just really have not seen him play. As I've said before, treat Trey Lance as your 4th-round pick this year. Age-wise, I think he's younger than Bo Nix. Chris is laughing. I know, right? It's crazy. But the contract is very different there. So I think this preseason is going to be massive for Trey Lance. One of these two guys, Trey Lance or Cooper Rush, will emerge as quarterback 2. And the Cowboys, make no mistake, they want it to be Trey Lance. They want it to be the more dynamic option in the event Dak gets hurt. Or in the event they want to give Lance a shot as a starter at some point, whether it's this year, next year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever. Rush doesn't cost that much. $2.25 million, by the way, for 2024. He was a free agent a couple years ago. No one had much interest there, which I think we get caught up sometimes in the win-loss numbers. The win-loss was really good with Cooper Rush. The actual film and the advanced numbers, all that stuff was not very good. It was kind of disappointing. But he did his job as a bus driver. And if he's your quarterback 3, you can justify paying about $2.5 million. Who do you think ends up being this team's backup quarterback? TL for Trey Lance, CR for Cooper Rush. Sound off in the comments. Does Dan Quinn want his boy Nahshon Wright back? He has not lived up to his top 100 draft pick status. This team was so desperate for corners a year ago, and we can't play Nahshon Wright or Kelvin Joseph. 2 massive misses there, by the way. $1.23 million in savings. Maybe the Commanders go, yes, we'd love to get him, but even Dan Quinn wasn't paying him, which makes me think it's a bit unlikely. The coverage stats don't look that bad in terms of completion percentage and yardages, but he just has not been reliable, trustworthy enough. And corner in general, under the radar, is a need. Gilmore and Lewis are free agents. You traded up for Eric Scott. Maybe he can be a nickel option for you. It's a possibility, kind of in the Deron Bland inside-outside flex mold. Maybe. Nahshon Wright, Israel Mukwamu still might be a safety. I don't know what his best spot is. He wasn't playing. Maybe put him at nickel. Josh Butler was a UFL guy. That scares me a little bit. Now, I trust Mike Zimmer to maximize this secondary, but you probably need some new pieces in there. Speaking of the Commanders, how many Cowboys from last year's roster end up joining Dan Quinn? I'm thinking like Dante Fowler and Dorrance Armstrong, maybe J-Ron Curse, a few others. Sound off in the comments section. I'm going to merge these next two guys together. Viliami Fehoko and Chauncey Golston. Mostly, what am I doing with them long term? Are they defensive ends or defensive tackles? Fehoko, they tried to make into a defensive end, but he could add some weight and play defensive tackle. That's an option, but he was in a redshirt year this entire season. This was a Dan Quinn pick. Dan Quinn loved him. Does Mike Zimmer love him in the same way? Chauncey Golston at times, I actually thought was a pretty good run stopper, but he's never been a high-end impact piece. He's always just kind of been like defensive lineman 4, or maybe 5 or 6 or 7 if you include the DEs in there. Does he add mass to stay at DT full-time, or does he become your new backup base defensive end? And do you have room for both of those guys? Defensive end-wise, Micah and Tank ain't going anywhere. We mentioned Sam Williams already. Fehoko? Is Chauncey Golston a 3 technique, or is he a defensive end? Because if he's a defensive end, like Fehoko, you need to go get some more defensive tackles. If he's going to add a little bit more weight to be a full-time 3 technique, you might need a new defensive end because your DT room is thin right now with Osa and Golston and Mozzie, the only 3 guys under contract. So if they don't fit the Zimmer scheme, even though he's only here on 1 year, I could see the Cowboys starting to make some decisions about moving on from some of those Dan Quinn draft picks.